In the bustling heart of Kuzani, a young woman named Zawadi dreamed of velvet gowns, golden earrings, and shiny black chariots she saw in glossy fashion magazines each night, her heart heavy with longing for a life bathed in luxury. Though she lived modestly, her mind wandered through imagined worlds of riches and silken ease, and yet at her side was Jabari, a humble schoolteacher who earned little but gave much, his affection wrapped in small bouquets of wildflowers, simple, meals under the mango trees, and laughter shared in parks with rustling leaves. Jabari adored her and wished to marry her, but Zawadi's heart, though touched, remained guarded. He is kind, she thought, but will he ever be rich? For she feared a life of struggle more than a life without love. One sunny afternoon after a workout at the local training hut, Zawadi paused outside and her breath caught as a sleek black car, gleaming like midnight oil, rolled to a halt, and out stepped a tall man in a sharp grey suit, his eyes hidden behind gold-rimmed shades, and his presence commanding. His name was Mosi, a wealthy merchant who owned factories across Nambala, and when he spotted Zawadi, he smiled and said smoothly, "Hello, beautiful stranger. I'm new here. Would you show me around?" Her heart raced, for never had a man so regal addressed her so sweetly, and with a fluttering voice she agreed. In the weeks that followed, Mosi swept Zawadi into a world she'd only imagined. Gifts wrapped in ribbons, dinners beneath chandeliers, bracelets that sparkled like stars, and she soon forgot Jabari and his gentle ways. Within 2 months, Mosi knelt with a diamond so large it stole her breath and asked her to be his wife. Zawadi, caught in the dazzle, said yes, not once stopping to ask herself who Mosi truly was. Her parents danced with joy when they heard, praising her for landing a rich man, their own dreams of escape from hardship finally within reach. But no one asked if she loved him, not everyone rejoiced. Jabari, shattered by the news, came to her doorstep one last time, eyes wet, voice shaking. "Please, Zawadi, you barely know him. I love you. I may not have gold, but I will give you joy." And for a moment she wavered, remembering his kindness, but then she looked at her ring, at the thought of silk beds and foreign cities, and said, "I'm sorry. Jabari, I've made my choice." He turned away with tears in his eyes, and she swallowed her sadness with dreams of wealth, whispering to herself, "This is what matters. This is success." On the day of her wedding, the village of Nambala sparkled. Drummers played, flowers lined the paths, and everyone spoke of Zawadi's fortune. Her gown was white as river foam, more expensive than anything she had ever touched, and her parents could not stop boasting, their grins wide as harvest moons. Mosi stood tall in a suit stitched by foreign hands, and when he slid the gold band onto her finger, Zawadi felt her dreams solidify into shining reality. But the glow began to fade the moment the ceremony ended. Mosi led her to his mansion, a stone fortress on the edge of the hills, and while it was grand in size, it felt hollow, walls bare, couches stiff, no laughter, no warmth. Worse still, the house overflowed with dogs, small, large, sleek, and shaggy, at least 20, scampering through the halls, barking, staring, watching. "Welcome home, my queen," Mosi said, arms open. "I hope you love dogs. They are my true family." And Zawadi, stunned, forced a smile, hiding the unease, crawling up her spine, whispering, "Of course, they're lovely." But her heart knew something wasn't right. That night, as darkness wrapped itself around the hills of Kuzani, Zawadi waited in her wedding chamber, expecting to begin a new life with her husband. But instead, Mosi quietly told her he would sleep in another room and disappeared down the hallway with his enormous Rottweiler by his side. "This is how it is in my family," he said, brushing off her confusion. "The dogs are special, you'll understand soon." But she didn't, and fear settled in her chest like cold water in clay, heavy and unshakable. The days crawled by, and Zawadi felt less like a bride and more like a shadow, for Mosi spent all his time with his dogs, feeding them by hand, grooming them like royalty, and barely speaking to her unless to bark instructions. Clean this, feed that, wash those bowls, and though her ring still sparkled, her soul dimmed with each passing hour. A week after the wedding, as she passed his office door, she heard him whispering over the phone. And though she hadn't meant to eavesdrop, The words sliced through her. "The marriage is complete," Mosey was saying. "Now the power of the dogs will multiply, and my wealth will double by year's end." Zawadi's heart turned to ice. She clutched the wall, unable to breathe, realizing she had not married a man but become a piece in some dark, twisted ritual that had nothing to do with love. She ran to her room, locked the door, and wept bitter tears of shame and regret. "I married for riches," she thought, "and now I am a prisoner among beasts and silence." She wanted to tell her parents, but their pride in her grand wedding blinded them, and anyway, where would she go? She had quit her job at the bank, owned nothing, and had no one to turn to except perhaps for one kind soul in that cold house. The maid, Ayo, who had worked for Mosi for years and watched Zawadi with quiet sympathy. One morning, as they folded laundry, Ayo finally broke her silence. Glancing around nervously, she whispered, "Madam, I know you are unhappy. This house, this man, he does bad things with those dogs. You should leave, before it's too late." Zawadi stared at her, stunned. She hadn't known anyone had noticed, much less cared. But fear held her tongue. "How?" she whispered. "He will never let me go, and I have no money, nowhere to run." Ayo gently squeezed her hand. "First, you must pray, ask for forgiveness, ask for strength, and then we will make a plan." That night, Zawadi knelt beside her bed and wept as she prayed. "God, forgive me. I was foolish. Give me courage to leave this place." And as the days passed, her strength began to grow like a hidden seed reaching for light. Then, 1 month after the wedding, Ayo returned with a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Tomorrow night he will be away at a dinner. I'll call a taxi. Pack only what you need. I will unlock the back door when the sun goes down. You must run and never look back." Zawadi's breath caught, fear and relief battling in her chest, but she nodded, her eyes full of tears. That night she didn't sleep, her heart pacing faster than time, and by morning she moved like a ghost, waiting, watching the clock, her hands trembling as she hid a small bag beneath her bed. Every time Mosey passed by, her stomach twisted. Would he know? Would he stop her? But she clung to the thought Ayo had planted in her heart. That life, any life, was better than one lived as a prisoner in a mansion full of dogs and secrets. Zawadi couldn't shake the feeling that somehow, some way Mosey would sense what she was planning, but when his car finally pulled away for the business dinner, she dashed to her room, heart thudding like drums in a sacred ritual. She pulled her small suitcase from under the bed and waited for Ayo's signal. Then came the soft knock and the whispered words, "It's time, madam, and the taxi is waiting down the street. Go now, and may you be safe." And with trembling hands, Zawadi hugged Ayo one last time before slipping through the back door, pausing for a breath as the cool night air met her face. "Can I really do this?" she thought, frozen for a heartbeat. But then came memories of hollow halls, ritual whispers, and the empty look in Mosey's eyes, and her legs moved like fire as she ran down the driveway. The taxi waited just as promised, and when the driver asked, "Where to, madam?" she replied, "Number 15 Mango Street, the only place that might still feel like home." She sank into the seat, watching the city lights flicker by like blinking spirits, her breath shaky, but her soul strangely lighter. She was free. When she arrived at her parents' gate, their surprise painted their faces. At first, they didn't believe her wild tale about Mosey, the mansion and the dogs, thinking she was simply fleeing marriage, but when they saw the fear in her eyes and the tears she could no longer hold back, their own faces crumpled. Her mother pulled her into a trembling embrace and wept. "My daughter, we are so sorry. We were blinded by wealth. Please forgive us." And Zawadi, crying too, whispered, "I do. I just want peace again." In the weeks that followed, she stayed inside, always listening for Mosey's footsteps, always afraid he might return to claim her. But he never came. It was as if he'd already begun seeking his next sacrifice, and slowly Zawadi began to mend the pieces of her broken self. She returned to her old job at the bank, where her manager greeted her warmly and spent time with her family, rebuilding, laughter where only sorrow had lived. But there was one thought that refused to leave her heart: Jabari, the kind teacher she had thrown away for shiny lies. Does he still remember me? She wondered until one day, gathering every scrap of courage, she visited his school and was stunned. Where once stood a small building, now rose a beautiful compound with a bold sign that read, Jabari's Academy for Gifted Children. Confused and nervous, she walked through the gates and found bright classrooms, students learning joyfully, and then she saw him, Jabari, tall and confident in a tailored suit, speaking with parents. When their eyes met, his widened in shock. Zawadi, he said, and her voice trembled. Can we talk? I need to tell you something. He led her to his office, walls lined with awards and memories, and she confessed everything from the day she left him to the nights she cried in a mansion full of dogs, her voice breaking. I chose greed over love. I don't expect forgiveness. But I had to say, I'm sorry. You were the better man. For a long while Jabari said nothing, and she braced herself for rejection, but instead his eyes softened and he said, Zawadi, it's never too late to fix a mistake. Sit down. Let's talk. And talk they did, through tears, laughter, and truths long buried, until slowly something warm began to bloom again between them. Jabari told her how heartbroken he'd been, but how he had thrown himself into work, found believers in his dream, and built something beautiful from pain. And Zawadi realized that sometimes the richest things in life are not bought, but built, and the most important treasures are not gold or diamonds, but second chances. You made me push myself harder, Jabari said softly. I wanted to prove that I could build something meaningful. And Zawadi's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him, her voice trembling. You've done so well. I'm happy for you. I just wish... But her words faded into silence, though he seemed to understand what she couldn't say. Gently, he reached for her hand and said, Zawadi, there's something you should know. I'm married now. My wife and I are expecting our first child. Her heart sank, not out of jealousy, but from the finality of a door she once slammed. Shut. She stood slowly, feeling awkward and ashamed, but Jabari stopped her. Wait, there's more. My wife is looking for someone to manage the school's accounts, someone with banking experience. Would you be interested? Zawadi blinked, stunned after everything he still believed in her. You'd give me a job, she asked. Jabari smiled gently. The past is behind us. You've learned. Now it's time to grow. And with that, her heart lifted. This was more than she ever dared hope for. A second chance not just to work, but to rebuild. Yes, she said through a grateful smile. I'd love to. From that day, Zawadi poured her heart into her new role at Jabari's Academy. She was good with numbers, but even better with hope. And as the school grew, so did her confidence. Jabari's wife, Adana, welcomed her not as a threat but as a friend, and together they prepared for the new baby. In time, Zawadi began saving for her own apartment, even taking night classes, and slowly the woman who once fled a mansion of fear became a woman with purpose. One day, walking home beneath the golden light of dusk, she passed the gym where she first met Mosey, the moment that changed everything, and paused, then smiled and kept walking. That chapter was closed. When she arrived home, her mother stirred a bubbling pot while her father read the paper, and in that simple, peaceful scene, Zawadi saw the treasure she'd been chasing all along, not jewels or mansions, but warmth, love, and quiet belonging. That night, as she lay under the stars, she whispered a prayer of thanks, not for riches but for grace, for learning the hard way that joy cannot be bought. It lives in honest work, in shared meals, in forgiveness, and in choosing right, even when it's hard. She had stumbled, yes, but she had also risen, and now with savings in her account, new dreams taking shape, and the courage to keep going, Zawadi looked to the future with hope. Maybe someday, she thought with a soft smile, I'll find love again, but for now I am whole. The next morning she rose early, dressed for work, and looked in the mirror, not at the girl who once chased diamonds, but at the strong woman she had become. As she walked to the school, the sun kissed her cheeks, and the breeze whispered welcome. Jabari waved from his office, and Adana stood beside him, glowing with life and kindness. In that moment, Zawadi knew deep in her heart, She was exactly where she was meant to be. And so, dear listener, the tale of Zawadi ends not in gold but in grace. Let us remember, as her story teaches, that the true riches in life are not measured in coins or castles, but in love, in courage, and in truth. May we all choose wisely, and when we fall, may we find the strength to rise again.